I'd gotten used to the quiet in that building. Mornings were always the same, a cup of coffee too bitter because I bought the cheapest grounds, the sound of someone else's TV bleeding faintly through the wall, and the walk downstairs to check if any mail had come in early. It usually hadn't. She was there that morning. My landlady. I don't know why it always caught me off guard, seeing her in the hallway, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back like she'd been cleaning something before sunrise. She didn't look like someone in her 40s. Or maybe it wasn't about age. Maybe it was how she carried herself, steady, like she belonged everywhere she stood. "Morning," she said, her voice just above a whisper, like the walls might gossip if she spoke too loud. I nodded back, half smiling, awkward as always. "Morning." I'd meant to keep walking, but she leaned against the doorframe, like she had time. Rent envelope was a little late this month. There wasn't any anger in her tone. Just a fact laid on the table. I rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, sorry. I've been picking up shifts, things slipped." She studied me for a second longer than felt comfortable, then softened. "I know. You're fine." I caught myself watching her hands, the way she tucked a stray piece of mail under her arm, fingers tapping once against the edge like she was measuring something invisible. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. She was my landlady. She had keys to my apartment, for God's sake. But every time we crossed paths, in the stairwell, by the laundry machines, once when she knocked to ask if the heat was working, there was something unspoken hanging in the air. Maybe it was just me. That morning, she surprised me with a question. "Do you drink that same coffee every day?" I blinked. Yeah? Why?" Her mouth tilted, half amusement, half disbelief. "You always carry the thermos down with you. Doesn't smell like anything worth drinking." I laughed, too quickly. "Yeah, well, it does the job." She let the silence sit between us, then shook her head. "You're young. You don't have to settle for does the job yet." It landed heavier than she probably meant it. I stood there, stupidly folding the corner of the rent notice she'd slipped me, trying not to look like I was holding on to her words. Eventually, she stepped aside. "Anyway, don't forget the laundry room light switch. Last tenant kept leaving it on." "Right. Got it." We didn't say goodbye. She just gave me one last glance, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them, before closing her door. The rest of my day moved like static. At work I kept replaying the way she leaned against that doorframe, casual, like she wasn't the reason my chest felt too tight. I left a text unsent on my phone, something dumb like, "Do you really hate my coffee?" But I couldn't bring myself to hit send. That night, I was lying in bed with the lamp still on when my phone buzzed. I figured it was a late group chat notification or some spam. It wasn't. It was her. Just one line. "If you're awake, come downstairs." I stared at her message longer than I should have, like the words might rearrange themselves if I blinked too much. My thumb hovered, debating a reply, but in the end I just got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and went downstairs. She'd left her door cracked open. The hall light cut a sharp line across her floor. When I stepped inside, she was sitting at the kitchen table, 2 mugs waiting. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Something like that." She gestured toward the chair across from her. "Tea. Not that sludge you call coffee." I smirked, sitting down. "That bad, huh?" She lifted her cup, blowing on the steam. "I lived in Seattle for 10 years. Bad coffee is practically a crime there." I'd never heard that detail before. Seattle. She always seemed like she'd grown roots in this building, like she belonged nowhere else. "You lived there?" A small nod. "Married there, too?" The words landed heavier than she probably intended. I wrapped my hands around the mug, the warmth seeping into my palms, giving me something to focus on. "And not anymore?" Her mouth pressed into the faintest line. "Not anymore." She didn't offer more, and I didn't push. For a while, we sat in silence, the kind where either of us wanted to break it but both knew we probably should. I caught myself tracing the chipped edge of the mug. "I've never even left the state." That made her look at me, really look. "You're what, 23? 22, I corrected. Her brow lifted, just slightly. I couldn't tell if it was surprise or something else. Plenty of time then. It should have been a harmless line, but I felt the gap between us stretch wider. Her in her 40s, carrying a whole other life behind her, me barely starting mine, stumbling through shifts, late rent, cheap coffee. And yet, sitting there, the quiet felt less like distance and more like a bridge we weren't supposed to cross. I imagined reaching for her hand, just to see if she'd pull away. I didn't. Instead, I shifted in my chair and asked, "Do you ever miss it? Seattle, I mean." She hesitated, eyes on the steam rising between us. "Sometimes. But mostly I miss being seen the way I was back then." Her voice thinned at the edges, almost breaking, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I just said softly, "I see you now." The words hung in the room, louder than they had any right to be. She met my eyes then, and for a second it felt like everything else had gone quiet. The refrigerator hum, the city noise outside, even the sound of my own breath. She reached over, not quite touching me, but close enough that her fingers brushed the edge of my sleeve before pulling back, as if she'd startled herself. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few days slipped into a rhythm I couldn't name. Passing her in the stairwell felt different now. Her eyes lingered a beat too long, and I caught myself holding my breath without meaning to. It was nothing, technically. Just nods, soft greetings. But the silence between us carried the memory of that night at her kitchen table. On Wednesday evening, I came home later than usual, arms full of groceries. She was at the mailbox, sorting envelopes. "Working late?" she asked. "Yeah." I shifted the bags, a loaf of bread nearly sliding free. She reached out without thinking, steadying the bag with her hand. Her fingers brushed mine for half a second, enough to make me freeze. Neither of us moved until the lobby door opened and someone else walked in, a neighbor, a guy about my age. He nodded at me, then at her, like nothing was unusual. But I felt myself step back, the space between us snapping closed as quickly as it had opened. She cleared her throat, pulling her hand away. "Careful with those eggs," she said lightly, and disappeared upstairs. I stood there longer than I should have, groceries pressing into my arms, heart beating too hard for such a small moment. Later that night, I found her sitting on the front steps. No tea, no mail in hand, just her, knees drawn slightly in, looking out at the streetlights. I hesitated at the top of the stairs before joining her. "You're out late," I said. She glanced over, almost smiling. "Couldn't sleep." Again. I sat, leaving space between us. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her arm. For a while we just listened to the hum of passing cars. Then she spoke low. "This isn't fair, you know." I turned to her. "What isn't?" Her jaw tightened. She didn't look at me. "You. Me. Sitting here like this." I wanted to say something, anything, to make it simple. But it wasn't simple. She was my landlady. Twice my age. Probably old enough to have known me as a kid, if life had tilted differently. Still, I heard myself ask, "Do you want me to leave?" Her breath caught, soft but audible. Finally she turned, eyes meeting mine. "No. That's the problem." The silence stretched until it almost hurt. My chest tightened with something I didn't have a name for. I shifted closer, just slightly, enough that my shoulder brushed hers. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, quick, almost guilty. Mine did the same. For one suspended second, it felt like the world had narrowed to the space between us. And then, a noise. The creak of a window sliding open above us, someone calling out into the night. We both jerked back like kids caught in the wrong place. She laughed under her breath, shaking her head. You should get some sleep. I stood, slower than I meant to. Yeah. You too. Walking back inside, I realized my hands were still trembling. We hadn't touched. We hadn't said anything we shouldn't have. But it felt like we almost had. It was raining the night it came to a head. Not hard, just that steady drizzle that makes everything smell like wet pavement. I found her outside the laundry room, leaning against a brick wall with her hood half up. She looked like she'd been standing there for a while, letting the rain catch the edge of her sleeves. You'll get sick, I said, juggling a basket against my hip. She gave a faint smile. Haven't yet. I set the basket down, water dripping from my hair. For a minute, we just listened to the soft drum of rain on the awning. Then she spoke, voice quieter than the rain. I saw you earlier. With that girl in the lobby. I frowned, confused. Who? Blonde. Carrying a backpack. She laughed at something you said. It clicked. A classmate who dropped by to study. Nothing more. She was just picking up notes. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. Doesn't matter. Not my business. But it did matter. The way she crossed her arms tighter, the way her jaw shifted like she just admitted more than she wanted to. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. It feels like it matters. Her laugh was short, unsteady. God, you're too young for this. For me. For any of this. I swallowed, hands resting uselessly at my sides. Maybe. But that doesn't stop it. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression cracked. The steady, composed landlady was gone, and in her place was someone exhausted and honest. I don't know what scares me more, she said. Wanting this, or what happens if I let myself. The rain filled the silence we couldn't. My throat was dry, but I forced the words out anyway. Then don't let it. Just want it. Her lips parted, like she might argue, but nothing came. Just a long, searching stare that made my chest ache. I almost reached for her, almost closed the space between us. My hand lifted an inch, then froze. She noticed. Her breath caught. We were standing so close the damp heat of her sleeve brushed mine. Every second stretched out, daring one of us to move. But instead, she whispered, Do you have any idea what this would cost me? The question landed heavy, not demanding an answer, just hanging there between us, raw, unfinished, undeniable. And I couldn't stop myself from wondering if she wanted me to say yes or no. After that night in the rain, I expected things to tilt forward, some shift, some acknowledgement that we'd been standing on the edge of something. But instead, it went the other way. She started avoiding me. Not in obvious ways, she still nodded when we passed, still left notes about the water heater or the trash schedule, but her eyes never lingered anymore. She never asked about my coffee, never left her door cracked open late at night. At first I thought I'd done something wrong. Maybe stepping closer in the rain had pushed too far. Maybe she regretted letting me glimpse that crack in her armor. Then, a week later, I found out. I was hauling laundry up the stairs when I heard her voice in the hallway, softer than usual. She wasn't alone. A girl, maybe 18, 19, was standing at her door, headphones looped around her neck, a backpack slung low. Her daughter. I froze, one foot on the step, listening without meaning to. You'll stay the weekend, she said, tucking a strand of wet hair behind the girl's ear. Her voice was careful, deliberate. We'll order takeout. Just us. The girl nodded, slipping inside. I didn't move until the door shut. My chest felt tight, but not from jealousy. More like the sudden realization that whatever I thought we were circling around, it wasn't just ours. It was tangled with things I hadn't even considered. A daughter. A life already half lived, with pieces I couldn't fit into. The next few days I kept my distance. No late-night texts. No hovering in the stairwell waiting for her to come down. I told myself I was respecting her space, but the truth was simpler. I didn't know where I fit anymore. Work, sleep, repeat. I let my groceries pile up, my laundry wait. Anything to avoid passing her door. But one night, around midnight, I caught myself drafting a message. Just a single line. I missed the tea. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over send. Then I deleted it. The room felt louder in the silence after, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone face down, waiting for something I knew wouldn't come. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. So I turned off the lamp and lay back in the half-dark, imagining the space downstairs, the light under her door, the 2 mugs that might have still been in her cupboard. And I didn't knock. It was late again when it happened. The building was hushed, stairwell lights dimmed, and I caught her at the front door, umbrella dripping on the mat. She must have just come back from somewhere, grocery bag tucked under her arm, hair damp from the rain. I almost walked past, like I had been for weeks. But something in me snapped at the thought of another night lying awake, phone face down, waiting for nothing. Hey, I said too quickly. She paused, adjusting the bag. Hi. The silence that followed was heavy. Too much unsaid packed into a single hallway. Finally I blurted, "Are you mad at me?" Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. No. Not mad. She shifted her grip on the bag. Just trying to do the right thing. I stepped closer, voice lower. And what's that supposed to mean? She gave a short laugh, the kind that wasn't funny at all. It means I have a daughter upstairs. A life I've already lived once. And then there's you. She shook her head. You shouldn't be tangled up in this. The words stung, but I didn't back away. You think I don't know that? I do. I think about it every time I walk past your door. Her breath caught. She looked down, then back up at me. For the first time, she seemed almost unsteady. So why don't you stop? I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. Because you're the first person in a long time who actually sees me. The words landed. She froze, like I'd pulled something she'd been keeping buried. Slowly, she set the grocery bag down by the door. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt alive, pulsing with everything we'd avoided saying. Then she stepped closer, just enough that I could see the raindrops caught in her hair. Her voice was a whisper. You don't know how dangerous that is, for me. For you. My chest tightened. Then tell me to stop. Her hand hovered, almost touching my arm before she let it fall back. I can't. We stood there, the sound of rain muffled against the glass door, the world outside moving on like none of this mattered. Finally, she exhaled, tired but honest. I don't know where this goes. I don't even know if it should. I nodded, forcing a small, shaky smile. Me either. Her lips twitched, half a smile in return. And then, quietly, she reached out, not for a kiss, not for anything reckless, just her hand brushing mine, warm and trembling. Okay, she whispered. That was all. No promises, no declarations. Just the softest word, carrying the weight of everything we hadn't said. Time didn't change everything at once. It never does. But little by little, the edges softened. We stopped pretending in the hallways. She didn't rush past me with clipped nods anymore. I didn't avoid her door like it might burn me. Instead, small things became habit. She'd leave the kettle on if she knew I was coming down, and I'd pick up an extra carton of milk when I noticed hers running low. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a declaration. Just 2 people rearranging their routines until they overlapped. Some nights we still sat on the front steps, like before, listening to the street hum. Only now, we didn't keep the distance. My shoulder against hers felt like something earned, not stolen. Her daughter came and went, never looking too closely at me, never asking questions we weren't ready to answer. And maybe that was enough. Maybe quiet respect was its own kind of acceptance. One morning, I was rushing down the stairs with that same dented thermos, and she caught me at the door. "Still drinking that?" she teased, eyes narrowing in mock disapproval. I grinned, holding it up. "Some things don't change." She shook her head, smiling to herself, then handed me a small paper bag. Inside was a packet of tea, the same kind she made that night months ago. "Try this instead," she said. It was simple. Domestic. Almost nothing. And yet I carried it all day like it meant more than it should. The thing was, it did. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment things shifted from almost to something real. It wasn't the rain, or the late-night tea, or even the touch of her hand against mine in that dim hallway. It was the quiet accumulation, the pauses filled not with fear anymore, but with presence. I'd catch her leaning against the counter while I fixed a leaky faucet in her kitchen, eyes resting on me a beat too long. She'd find me on the bench outside, watching the buses crawl by at 8:47 a.m., and wordlessly sit beside me with 2 mugs in hand. We didn't talk about what we were. We didn't need to. The closeness was stitched into the fabric of days, ordinary and fragile, and hours. Sometimes, when the apartment was still, I'd remember that first night, her voice low across the table, saying she missed being seen. And every time, I'd think, so do I. Now, when she catches me staring too long, she just shakes her head and smiles, like she knows exactly what I'm thinking. And I smile back, because she's right. Nothing dramatic. No grand endings. Just this. And for once, this is enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?